Hello?
Hello, Lydia?
That's right. Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for calling into Zinecore Radio.
It's Sunday. I love it.
I've never done a Sunday morning show, but...
It's good for you.
Exactly. I'm going to give a brief introduction to Lydia Lunch, and then we're going to jump into the interview. As I was saying right before you called, Lydia, that it's rare that one gets the opportunity to speak to an artist whose work means so much to them. So this is an amazing opportunity, and I'm very thankful that you're taking the time to call in this Sunday morning. There's no way to categorize Lydia Lunch. She's a writer, she's a musician, spoken word, installation artist, photographer. She's an all-around creative powerhouse. Briefly, I'll say in the 70s, she sang with the band Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, who recently did 2 reunion shows in New York. She used to make films with Richard Kern as part of the Cinema of Transgression, and since then she's just been nonstop, prolific force that no one can fuck with. Her writing includes Dulcers Anonymous, Paradox, The Incriminating Evidence, and graphic novels like Toxic Gumbo and Asphyxiate, recordings, Drowning in Limbo, Universal Infiltrators. The list goes on and on. It's a very impressive list, and it's all amazing. Her work has really taught me that speaking up about your truth, your sexuality, your fears is not something to shy away from, but to embrace. And so, Lydia, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I would love to jump in and ask you first, just to jump right in, can you talk about yourself as when you discovered yourself as an artist and when you knew your life was going to be art?
Probably at 12. I mean, I started writing at 12 and inspired by the literature of Hubert Selby and Henry Miller specifically, who I felt took their life and slightly fictionalized, but still were writing the truth about situations that were happening. And that was probably more inspiring to me than music. I knew that I had to tell my truth according to the way I saw it, even at that age. I didn't know how I would be telling it, who I would be telling it to, or for how long I would keep talking, but there you go. I knew, I had an epiphany then that it all began with the words for me, and they were going to start being rammed down people's eyes, throats, mouths, nose, and every other orifice I could squeeze them in. I think because, too, I didn't feel alone in my psychosis, trauma. I felt as if what I was channeling or feeling was very universal. It just hadn't been described from a female point of view accurately enough. But I'd never felt like, and that's probably the difference between myself and a lot of other people that have been in traumatic situations. Often women turn the knife inward. I already wanted to turn the knife, the pen, outward.
And, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people tend to be intimidated by artists, especially female artists, who are open and brutal with their honesty, especially about sexuality and violence and the female experience, which can be a traumatic experience in and of itself. People are intimidated by you because of your brutal honesty in your work?
Well, they are until I smile at them or talk to them for a minute. But I mean, the people that are frightened of a powerful woman don't need to come to my show anyway. I mean, I'm not there to convince them of anything. It's a sad reflection on the lack of powerful women in all forms of public mediums. I don't think it's so much of a reflection on me, even if I may be to the nth degree of aggression, of passion, of determination, of expression. But I think that there's just still, at this point, not enough examples of aggressive women. I mean, I always felt that if, you know, my name was Charles Lunch, Henry Lunch, it would have probably been a lot easier to get my stuff out there. But so fucking what? It's not going to stop me, and I think it makes it more urgent. It continues to inspire me, the fact that I need to occupy a void I feel exists in music, art, and literature that speaks to not only a very specific type of person, but yes, a very specific type of person, male or female, who has just felt overwhelmed or in the wrong place for decades, or not with the right kind, or in a family or a social or a religious situation that's just domineering and and a reflection then of the rest of the world, which is set up still to make women who understand their sexuality or not feel as if they're just pawns of this male-dominated patriarchal boxing match.
So do a lot of let me not jump to that question yet, actually, because let me ask you this first. So when you're writing, then, and you're talking about these things, do you think about your audience when you're writing, or do you just write what you need to write and then let your audience?
I never think about the audience. Usually not even when they're right in front of me, and it's not an insult to them. It's that I'm thinking of the individual who needs to hear this. I'm not thinking of a group of people or a congregation or a arena full. I'm not thinking of a room full, specifically one. And not that I have one person in mind when I'm writing it, but as my own therapy to prevent myself from becoming homicidal, or at least more homicidal than I am. I try to keep it to my art. I mean, I'm just using the many voices within myself to heal other parts of myself, knowing full well that there are other people that share the same issues.
Right.
So I'm never thinking about the audience at all. And, I mean, actually how I really get off in performing live, it's so perverse and it's so incredibly Lydian, is, look, if I'm doing a really forceful, long, we'll keep it to spoken word because that's the most direct spoken word piece. And I know that when I'm writing it, certain images, just because they are so filmic, are so cinematic, are so astonishing, so real. And the audience, we'll consider them for a minute, is going to get stuck on that vision for a few minutes. And I'm still going to be barreling through the poetry, the language, the point, the passion. I really enjoy that. Most artists, you have to understand everything I say and do. It's like, I don't feel that way at all. It's like you take what you take, get what you need, hopefully from what I'm doing. You don't have to hear everything I've ever done. You don't have to see everything. I mean, I don't wish that on anyone. The time capsule will await for future generations who have more time off the internet. So it's very contrarian that way.
It's interesting because, I listen to, I'm a big fan of your spoken word, especially, and I love re-listening to pieces, just as you just said. I mean, there's just, the first time I listen to it, you get one thing, and the next time you listen to it, I notice something else, and that layered aspect, so it's interesting to hear you say that, because I really...
Well, and it's been pointed out to me, but I never used it as a technique because I'm not aware of it. I mean, some people have said, you write, or your speeches or spoken word stuff, it's very circular. And I'm like, is it? I never realize I'm coming back around to make the point again. But, I mean, because everything that I do, whether it's lyric writing or photography, speech writing, it's all very automatic. I mean, most of it is just the aggravation of life or the euphoria of experience, day-to-day reality, pacing, and I'm not sitting around filling notebooks just to do it. I'm not graphomania. But when I'm about to unleash something, because I've had the experience already. I'm writing